Hello, I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to Molten Modular. Today I'd like to invite you into a project that I'm working on. It's kind of the perpetual project of trying to pull together a modular live rig. Now, I've been performing live with modular ever since I kind of put my first one together, and I've done it with a single row, with 2 rows, with 3 rows, with cumbersome great big boxes that I've dragged to something in fear that the whole thing's going to fall apart or break or get stolen. And so I find myself forever on a search of how to do it better. How to have enough stuff that's portable, that's movable, that's not going to fall apart, that's going to be reliable, the sort of case that's going to allow me just to pick it up, take it, go and perform. The closest I've got so far is my lovely orange case here from Lake, and this is almost it. It was almost it. It's a beautiful thing. A very, very beautiful thing, and felt like a real step in the right direction. The problem with it, as much as anything, is that I can't put the lid on and leave it patched. The lid's just not deep enough. And I increasingly discovered it's just not big enough. There's not enough room. This is 2 rows of 104 HP. And while there's a lot in there, and I can do a gig with less, I'm always finding myself spilling out of it. I just need a bit more. And so I run into this Tom geezer, right, at a superstar celebrity party. You know how these things are. And he happens to be the guy from Source Distribution who do Arturia in the UK. And he suggested trying out a pair of Arturia RackBrutes. Arturia RackBrutes, you say? Possibly. Now, these aren't new or anything. They've been around a couple of years and they were quite well received. And they've certainly been responsible for bringing a lot of people into modular, because it's a case and power supply solution from a company that we know and understand, and doesn't seem to involve any of that magic jiggery pokery that you're supposed to be able to deal with when you're dealing with modular. And so the RackBrute seemed like an interesting proposition. Also using 2 of them together, because I've not seen that, because they have this quite innovative way of being mounted with some kind of bracket to one of the Arturia little synthesizers. And that's been a really good way of expanding from having a little synth into a little bit of modular. But you can actually run 2 of those cases together to make like a clamshell type modular rig. And so I thought, yeah, well, that's got to be worth a go. So Arturia sent them over, and I've been pondering them and playing with them, which has developed into a little bit of tinkering, which has developed into a bit of modding, which has developed into using things like drills and doing dangerous things with power supplies. And so I'm now at a stage where I'd like to kind of share this project with you, because it's mildly interesting and perhaps it might be something you want to do yourself. However, I will throw in the caveat that everything I'm going to do in this video would, for any product really, break the warranty. And I've been in touch with Arturia and I've asked them about the things that I'm doing, and they essentially said, no, we wouldn't advise doing any of that. And so I do this entirely without Arturia's permission and at my own risk. And if you were to follow suit, you'd be absolutely doing it at your own risk too. So you may break things, you may break yourself, you may burn your house down. So please take that on board before pursuing this kind of madness. So what on earth could I be doing, I hear you say? Well, that's a good question. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's have a look at the RackBrute. Here it is, the Arturia RackBrute. It's really rather nice. I mean, it's made of metal that's been sort of powder coated in some way. It's got these rather nice, almost wooden ends, veneered ends. It has an internal bus board for power supply and this power supply module here. It has a threaded rails, which people seem to like, and this rather sort of interesting way of connecting with other things in order for it to ultimately fold up, which we'll look at in a minute. My only slight worry at this point is that it is actually rather heavy. on its own, and that may have an impact on the old portability. But again, these are things we're going to look at as we go. Now, when the RackBrute came along, and you can get it in a single row 3U or the double row 6U as I've got here, I was pretty impressed with it. I mean, in many ways it was the excitement of the idea that Arturia might be releasing some modular modules that was perhaps behind the excitement behind the case. But of course that's not actually happened. Arturia haven't released anything in a modular format. However, the case itself is pretty decent, except for two things. And one of the reasons why I wanted to look at this is because it gives me the opportunity to perhaps tackle, maybe even solve, two issues that I think was really holding the RackBrute back. Those two issues are, first of all, the power supply. Now, it's a decent enough power supply, it's fine. But why on earth is it here? Why is it here? Why is it a module? Why is it not inside the case? I mean, you designed the case, Arturia. This is your case, you built it. Great, you know, bus boards in here. But why use up precious HP? Because this is like, oddly, 5 HP wide. Why use that up on your power supply when you could have easily mounted this inside somewhere with a switch coming out the side or some other way? There's absolutely... I can think of no reason why you would want to sacrifice HP for this if you don't have to. Now, if you're buying a skiff from somewhere and a power supply from somewhere else, then sure, yeah, you have a power supply module, and that's actually the easiest way of getting power into a case, because you don't have to worry about drilling holes in things. And also, this will take a laptop style supply rather than mains, which makes the whole thing much, much safer. So the type of power supply, yeah, great, that's fine, no problem. Just its existence on this front panel drives me nuts. It's like, why? Why do that? So that's one thing I'm going to see if I can tackle. The other thing is this. Now, you know I love you, Arturia, but I don't love you that much. You know, you're not Moog, are you? And so your lovely A logo sitting on the case like that is just... it's just not a thing. Because you imagine, I'm going to a gig, you know, I set up my Arturia RackBrutes like this with the other one here, as you'll see in a minute. And all the crowd can see, with my face peering up over the top, is a whacking great big A for Arturia. And nothing in here is by Arturia, just the case. So advertising your logo whoppingly big on the back of the case, just to me is nuts. It's a nonsense. You know, you don't have that logo currency like someone like Moog does. So that's great, but I'm going to do away with that. So I'm already done a lot of this, so we're not going to be here like all day trying, as you watch me scrub the back of this to take this off. No. Let me show you what I've done with the other one. And then what we'll do a bit of that to this one, put them together, see where we are. And then ultimately the plan from this is to start building our perfect live performance modular. That's what we're trying to get to. That's the purpose of all of this. So here is the other one, which I have already modded. Okay, first of all, I've put it on its bracket, which is rather nice. The other one is going to fit here. It's just going to be brilliant. I'm quite excited about it, although I haven't fully put it together yet. And I certainly haven't filled them full of modules to know how much this is going to flipping weigh. Anyway, I can always take a trolley. Always take a trolley to a gig. That's always a possibility. So what have I done? Well, essentially, all I've done is taken the power supply off here, and I've stuck it in here. That's it. That's all. So it wasn't too exciting, but it completely solved the problem and now gives me 2 entire 84 HP rows to stick my modules in. I don't really need to see the lights. I don't really need to access the switch. All I need to do is to power it and to make sure the thing doesn't blow up or short out. That's really what we're dealing with. So what I did, just to take you through the process, is that my first thought was that I could mount it somehow sticking out the side. let's take this out of here so I can use it as a visual aid. So here's the power supply module. So I thought perhaps, you know, I could have it sticking out the side. I could cut a hole in here, right? Have it sticking out the side and mounted in there. That would work because, you know, this cable is going to reach back to its power socket here. So that was my first thought. Then I thought, well, no, I can be cleverer than that. What I can do is, because it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to cut a hole in here with a right amount of accuracy to get this to sit beautifully. So I figured, well, what I could do is I could solder some wires onto the switch, or desolder the switch and pull that out, and the LEDs and the socket, make holes in the side, push all of those through so that you've kind of got wires, and I've extended all of these things out into the side with the switch as well. So it's all represented brilliantly and gorgeously on the side of the case. Yeah, that's another awesome idea, except it was just going to be too hard. I mean, I went looking for switches and bits and pieces that I could use, and maybe I use a nice rocker switch, you know, other things. And I thought, you know, looking at these, desoldering them, you know, how easy is that going to be? Well, you know, not difficult. But ultimately, I came to the conclusion that why am I doing all of that? Who am I trying to impress by putting the little lights in the side there? And is that actually necessary? And perhaps what I need to be thinking is not how to do this as elegantly and awesomely as possible, but just to actually get it done, because then it's likely that I will get it done. So it was at that point that I kind of realized I don't actually need to see these lights. Yeah, I know these lights on here, right? They show voltage. They tell you that the voltage is working, you know, +5, plus and minus 12, that kind of thing. Well, you know, if it's not working, it's not working. But when it's working, it's working. I've never seen a power supply fail. I've never seen a light on any of my power supplies other than what's supposed to be there. So I don't think I will be losing anything by not being able to see those. So then what about the switch? Well, if you have the switch on, then when you plug in the power, because it takes one of these sort of laptop supplies, then it will turn on, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of danger in that. I wouldn't have thought, and plenty of pieces of equipment work in that way. So then I thought, what about this? Well, this is the place where actually some modding was required. So I needed to get the power in there. I could drill a hole, perhaps, in order to get the power thing in. But then I thought perhaps it's better to drill a smaller hole and just get a couple of wires through. So I came up with this. Look at this. So it's an extension cable that plugs into the power supply at one end, and this end plugs into the laptop-esque supply. Plug that in, and the whole thing works. The only hole I've had to drill, and I have had to drill a hole, was just through here. I've drilled it through a screw hole that already existed, just to keep it as simple as possible. And then I've made it as small as possible, so rather than pushing this end through, I just pushed the other end of the wires through, and I've connected it up with a little electrical junction box, which means I can also very easily remove it and change it or do something else with it. I'm not modding this beyond repair. I'm not changing anything about it. I'm just changing its position in the case and rigging up some kind of cable for it. But then I had another thought, because I'm going to have two of these, and of course I've got two complete ones. Each one comes with its own power supply, and so I can do this thing for both of the cases, but then I've still got to power it with two power supplies. And if you're thinking about a gig situation, well, I only really want one power supply. Why should I use two? Can't they share the same power supply? Because many of my other bits and pieces do. I've got, for instance, over here you can't quite see, but is a 4MS row power supply, and I have one of those in each row in this rack over here, and only a single laptop supply goes to the top, and the rest are daisy chained using these little cables that go out of one and into the other. I also have the same deal with some Befacco Power Skiff power supplies I have in another rack over there, they do exactly the same thing. They take a single DC in supply and then they daisy chain that to other power supplies to run other stuff. So you're not using a single power module to run a massive amount of stuff. You're using multiple power modules, but they're only being powered by a single supply. Is that a problem? When would that be a problem? Could it ever become a problem? Is a question I can't really answer because I've never run into a problem as yet. People do talk about problems with power supplies and modules behaving strangely and weirdly. It's just something that I've not encountered. Now, Arturia have built this for this power supply to run an entire rack. I mean, there's what, 5, 10, 15, 20, I don't know, at least 30 power sockets for potentially 30 modules in here, which is loads. But this power supply can quite happily do that without any bother. So will it be taking all of the ampage from the laptop supply? And so therefore, if I split it into two, will that mean less amps going into one and going into the other? I suppose so. Now, I confess that I'm not an electronics engineer or electrical engineer, and so all I'm doing really is going by what I've experienced so far. And one of the things I've experienced in modular is that power supplies are vague at best. There's no real rules. There's no standardization particularly. All you're trying to do is get 5 volts and 12 volts out the other end, really. And after that, it doesn't seem to matter what sort of laptop supply you use, as long as it supplies enough. Doesn't seem to matter if you split them off or not. Doesn't seem to matter how many of these things you daisy chain off. I mean, obviously there comes a point where it does matter, but in my usage of these sorts of size systems, I've never run into a problem. So that is what I'm going with. I'm going with the idea that I've never run into a problem, and so I'm not going to now. So there. But ultimately, if I do, I'll just run 2 power supplies. You know, it's no big deal, but I'm going to see if I can run the 2 off the 1 power supply. All right. So how do you do that, I hear you ask? Well, through the magic of the splitter cable, like this. Now, this is for guitar pedals. This is where all this kind of DC power supply splitting comes from, is for guitar pedals. So I can run 2 guitar pedals off a single connection. This goes on, see, they've got on the end of here, like so, and then these go into your power supplies. However, it's not as simple as that, because the size of this socket on here is 2.5 mil, and the power supply here is 2.5 ounce. It's a 2.5 mil connection. Now, on guitar pedals and on these expanders and everything else, it's 2.1 mil. Now, in some places, it doesn't seem to matter. For instance, I can plug in a regular 2.1 sort of size laptop supply in here and it will fit. Similarly, I can plug the 2.5 millimeter output plug from the power supply into a 2.1 mil adapter and it fits. Snug, but it fits. However, these ones at this end, they do not fit. They don't fit. They won't go in. It's just not gonna fit. Something to do with the size of the internal bit there, of the sticky out bit, and the size of that hole, just not compatible. It's not gonna fit no matter how much I kind of push it around. So that was a concern, and initially I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get around that. Try to find some kind of adapter that goes from 2.1 to 2.5, or is it 2.25? I forget. Anyway, slightly smaller size, a slightly bigger size. But in the end, what I found was with these things, I can get a 2.5 size plug here to a bare wire, and then on the other end, have a 2.1. And that would mean that my splitter cable would therefore work. Which of course it doesn't here because I haven't changed it. I'm going to show you how I do that. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to do. So what I've got is, are you still with me? What I've got is a replacement, because initially I got the right size one and realised it's not going to work with the splitter. So I've then got one which is slightly smaller, which does work. Ace. So now all I need to do is replace this cable with this one, and we're sorted, completely sorted. So let's do that. So this is simply connected on here with this little junction box, which I undo via a screwdriver. I can then pull this through my little hole that I made. Now we're going to drill this hole in the other case in a little bit. So we're going to do that together. So that's out. That's the bad one. Don't want that one anymore. This is the right one. Right. Make sure that fits. Yep. So the hole that I made is literally just big enough for this to work without sort of pulling or snagging too much. There we go, that's in. Now with this, obviously, make sure black goes to black, red goes to red. That kind of stuff. So that's in, nice and secure. And so now I should be able to fit my splitter onto there. That will go to the power supply. It'll go into here and power it up, and it will be fantastic. And it will work. It's just going to work. So a little bit of jiggery pokery required in order to get this to work with a splitter adapter, but all you've got to do is get the slightly smaller size bit of cable with the adapter on the end, and you're away. Now, how am I mounting this in the case? That's the other question. Well, you've only got quite a short cable that connects it to the main bus board here, so there's only so far you can go. Now I've been sort of slightly worried about shorting things out, so I've put a load of gaffer tape on the bottom to isolate it from the metal of the case. That seemed important. And then simply I'm velcroing it on this bit here to the bottom of the case. You know, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, not trying to do anything too clever. Now this might not be good enough. I might need to secure it with something else. I might need to tie it down or use rubber bands. Not sure yet. We're going to see how this goes. So I'll plug that back in there and put this back on its Velcro, like so. The Velcro also holds it off the case, and I don't mind the edge of this going onto the gaffer tape. That seems okay. That's going to be fine. It's not going to electrocute anything. I've got my cable in, there's plenty of room. I do have to be aware if I'm putting modules in here that the clearance is not going to be hitting these chips, because that would be bad. We don't want that to happen. Now, is this on or off? Well, let's plug it in and find out, shall we? So here is my power supply here. It's already plugged in, and I just plug it in like so. And it doesn't appear to be on yet, so I'm just going to hold this carefully just on the edge of the module, so I don't want to be touching anything, just on the edge, and I'm going to flick that switch, and there we get all the lights. You get all the lights? I hope you do. So there's lights on the front of the power module here, and there's lights corresponding there as well, which tells me that all is well currently, and it's completely fine. And so once this has got modules in it, I'm not going to be going in there to turn it on or off. I'm just going to be putting the plug at the wall, and that is fine. That's fine. So with that genius little bit of splitting and moving of the power supply, I have reclaimed that 5 HP. I've now got the entire thing that I can work with purely from my own modules, not having to worry about the power supply that's packed away inside here. Ace. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, the big A. So I sorted out the big A, right? You know about my love of paint stripper. Well, I used it again, and now have that. I think that's rather nice. So all I did, I got my tin of paint stripper and I wiped it down kind of quite carefully, and not really that carefully. There's still sort of residue and bits and pieces knocking around because, I don't know, I get bored with things. So finishing things off neatly is not really my forte. I just like to get stuck in there and get the main thing done and then move on to the next exciting thing. So that's what I did. Got this decal done. I went a little bit far with the paint strimming. So here, for instance, it went down to the metal, which is a shame, or as a chipped or something. But I've also got to think about this as being a gigging rig, and so it's going to end up getting scuffed and scratched and all those sorts of things. This is not a studio. This is not for studio use. This is for being out in some grimy pub somewhere, trying to throw together some weird electronic kind of techno stuff. So I'm expecting it to get a bit bashed around, but that is far better. So when I'm gigging on my single power supply with all my modules, you know, I'll be able to put that up there and I'll be peering over the top still going, yay, give us a wave. But then people will see who I am or what I am or something. We'll have something to look at which will make some kind of sense in as far as the gig goes. And the other thing I've considered is maybe putting a screen, you know, an LCD screen, or even a Surface, putting something like that there which is showing visuals. That could be interesting. Anything other than that bloody A. Are you with me so far? So this one is essentially done. So what I'm going to do is I'll take you through doing exactly the same thing on the other one and what it is that we're going to have to do to make that happen. So a little bit of drilling, a little bit of decision making, and hopefully we'll get the two bits together, get it working, and then we'll think about what modules to put in it, yeah? Exciting stuff. One important thing to think about before I get too far into this is the orientation of these two cases, because they are going to be connected together by these feet here onto the side here. And that means that this is how you would normally use it, because you'd use it up like that, and you'd have your micro brute or your mini brute or something, your drum machine thing here that would be attached to it. But because I'm putting two of these together, and this is essentially becoming the little synth at the bottom, this needs to be around this way. So the whole thing is upside down, and that throws up an immediate difficulty because it means the power supply's on the wrong side. So in order to do the wonderful thing where I have a single power supply going in this side, I'm going to need to make sure that the cable goes out that way, not this way as it is on that one. It has to go out the other way. So that's quite important. I could potentially unscrew all of this and turn that upside down, but then it's going to put those, you know, these bits would be the wrong way up. So I don't think that's going to work. So I think the only way to do it is to have a long enough cable, which I do. So that's the solution. It's just a matter of being aware of it. The other thing that's quite interesting is when these come together, because it's going to fold up or fold down, you have these things here, which prevent the whole thing from crashing into each other. And I don't yet know how that fits with the ones on this one. Do they fit together? Are they going to clash? I don't know. Do we need one of them and not the other? I don't know. I just don't know. So that's something that we're going to discover as we go. But it's a really nice design, the way that it's able to fold down onto your synthesizer and not crush it, not break it, and leave itself patched together, I think. I've even got a bag that's supposed to fit the whole lot that Arturia gave me. You know, this could be awesome. That's what I'm saying. Could be awesome. So the plan is move the power supply over there, drill a hole, put some stuff in it, and then I've also got to sort out the back. So what am I going to sort out the back with this time? We'll come to that. No, we probably better do it first, because otherwise I'm going to get this connected to there and then it's going to be more difficult to do. So yeah, let's deal with the back first. So this time, rather than rubbing all this out, I'm just going to put something straight over the top. Let me show you. For this, I got this made, which is sort of my other logo that I've been enjoying, the whole jellyfish thing. But it's the artwork that I had for it. It wasn't able to be made into a decal. So instead, we've gone for something which is completely solid, and this is just going to go right over the top. So let's see if I can get that to work. It's been sitting around a little while, so it's got a bit dusty, but that's okay. Now think in my head, which way up is it going to be? Does it matter? because this is going to be the bottom. But does it have to be? Is it completely reversible, so this could be the top? Either way, is it important as to the orientation of that? Because this one is important, because that's the one that's going to be sticking up and people will see that. So this one people won't see until I've picked the system up and I'm moving it away. So do I want to be able to push that down and have this up? And so that's going to be seen. Or if I carry it by the handle, then this will be upside down. That's okay. But perhaps it's better for the other side to be the right way around in that case. Or maybe they should be the same, so that I can sit it up like this and have this folded up. Is that going to be a thing? I don't know. See, I don't know. That folds up a bit. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll put it on later. So okay, we'll leave this until I have it together and I can better see which way round and how it orientates and how it hangs together. Does that make sense? Good. Right, let's get this bit done. Okay, this will do. Right, so with this, similarly, got to be mounted down here somewhere. And then the cable is going to go off through there. A couple of bits of this. Oh, I could have done that better. Oh, well, never mind. So that should be able to sit on there. Without shorting out. Okay, good. So that's going to work like that. For the moment, I'm going to take this out of here. So it's this side that I need to drill the hole. So ultimately what I do is I'm going to have to take the side off in order to do that, I think. So I'm not showering the rest of it with either bits of metal or bits of wood. So to do that, you've got these weird star shaped screws on the side, but I believe I have an end that will sort that out. Now this isn't going to come off until we've also undone this bit here. Oh! Well, it might come off a bit, but we've definitely got to undo this little rack here. There we've got our piece. Now, of course, your first thought with this bit here is to go through this screw hole. And that seems like a great idea, except that it just doesn't quite fit. I can't get it through. Now you can probably get slightly smaller wire or something like that, but this is what I had, and so I thought, well, I'm going to have to come up with another solution. So my other solution was to use this screw here and drill through that hole that already exists. So I'm not having to make any kind of new incision upon the metal, this plate here, but I'm going to go through a hole that already exists. That seemed like an awesome plan. So this screw has hardly done anything at all, but it does give me something to work with. So power tools. That is about bang on right. Is that what I used? I think I used this one. Now, of course, at this point, any normal person would go over to their woodworking workshop and vice it up and things like that, measure it, blah blah blah, all that good stuff. I'm just going to ram this through here and hope I don't hit my own cable. Okay. Okay. Job done, I think. Now I probably could have done it a little bit neater had I thought about it, like putting some masking tape on this side so that it didn't crack or split at this side, but it hasn't done, so I got away with that. So that's super. Let's see whether our cable fits. Yeah, nice. Like so. That's awesome. Let's put that back on. And that's done. Now, of course, the first time I did this with the other one, I soldered it, like a proper guy. didn't use this junction. No, I soldered it. I got some heat shrink out, did it nicely, soldering iron. I thought, yeah, this is great. And it was at that point that I discovered that it was the wrong size and the adapter wasn't going to fit, which was a bit of a shame. So getting the little junction box is a far better way, simply because I can undo everything much easier if necessary. Oh, great, super. So now I can put this back on. Now, there is some conversation to be had about whether the power supply itself is designed to be in free-flowing air so that it gets cooled. Does that make sense? It's like with the tip-top Microzeus power supply, the front panel gets really hot, and that's part of is getting rid of the heat from the circuit. But the Microzeus is the only power supply I know that does that. The other ones I have, the Bufacco ones, the 4MS ones, they don't require anything like that. And in fact, I spoke to Manu at Bufacco about this whole idea, and he said if it was a power skiff, it would be no problem. Yeah, you could absolutely do all the things that I'm talking about doing. So I'm fairly confident that although there is a little bit of that could be a heat sink on there, potentially, I don't think it's going to be a problem. I mean, if it is, then we'll have a rethink. But as far as I can see it so far, I don't think I'm going with the idea that it's not a problem. All right. So simply, I'm going to put some Velcro on this bit here. And mount it on here. I plug it into the power. And I turn on the switch. And once again, we get all the lights working. And so as with the other one, I can leave this on, once I've got modules in here, and then all I'll do is turn it off at the wall or pull the cable out, and that'll work. So that's beautiful. That's that modded as well. So now let's see if we can fit the two together and see what that looks like. So when this is sort of stood by itself, it's really quite upright, which is great for the logo on the back. That's super. However, once I mount this into here, it changes it rather. This bit needs to go into here, and that's going to change the angle here. And I haven't still quite got to grips of how all this works yet, but let's soldier on, see where we get to. So this should just sort of bend itself in like that. It's rather splendid. It is rather splendid. Now I have these two rather nice looking screw things to go in the side. Now I'm making assumptions here because I've never seen anybody else do this. Put two RackBrutes together. But Tom at Arturia, or Tom at Source rather, he seemed to think, oh yeah, that's no problem. So I'm going with the oh yeah, no problem sort of angle. Okay, that's in. Now it does have, whoops, it does have a bit of kind of give to it. So that can turn around to there. Is that as far as it goes? That's as far as it goes. This can fold back to there. Oh my goodness. Look at that. And then, look! You have a workable, carryable, remaining patched 12U flipping solution. Look at that. Oh, that's far better even than I thought it was going to be. It's heavy though, and it's going to get heavier with all those flipping modules, but that's really interesting. Now, of course, this logo is now upside down. That's okay because of the way I'm putting it together. So when I would turn up, I would put this down. I'm assuming I would pull this up and the whole thing, whoa, would unfold itself. That's ace. That is ace. What a good job. Now, in terms of that sticker, I'm then going to have to make a decision. Now, if it's always going to open like this, then this is always going to be flat down. So you're never going to see the jellyfish unless you pick it up. So my thinking goes that when I close this, and I pick it up, then it's going to be worth having it the right way up, because then if I have it here on this bit here the right way up, it will be seen the right way up. Do you see what I mean? But if I was to fold it out from here, it would then be upside down. But I'm not going to be using it that way up. I can only use it in one orientation. I can't use it in both because all my modules will be upside down. And I'm not that advanced. I'm not advanced enough yet to be able to use my modules upside down. So it makes sense to me to have this way round. That's the only way that's going to work. Right, I should put it on then. Whoa! Oh my goodness. Yeah, I should just do it. So it's going to be like that. Now I could start it at one end. I think that's what I might do. But then I don't know. Is it better to do it like this? Or is it better? I don't know. Well, that's going to try to get that in there as much as centrally as possible. Oh, it's painful. Okay, it's not quite capturing all the lettering. but I'm going to let that go, I think. Is it straight? Is it heckers like? Straight enough. It's straight enough, I think. Straight enough for me. Okay. Nice. I think that's going to work. So what I should do is I should plug in the power, see whether that works. Because that's what it's all about. If this doesn't go in and turn itself on without blowing up, then it's all kind of for nothing. Great. I have power and lights in both cases. Excellent. Right, so it was at this point that I spent like a good hour selecting and putting in modules into my new lovely rack. And I thought, rather than keep that in this video, making it ridiculously long, I'm going to pull out that section because it's interesting in and of itself and stick that in another video. So if you want to see why I put in what I put in as I put it in, and the discussion around that, then do go and check out my other video of putting modules into this RackBrute case. Otherwise, for the purpose of this video, in how we get these cases to work in this situation I'm putting in, we're going to skip right to the fact that I've put all the modules in, that's fine, and we'll carry on from that point. All right? So let's plug it in. Well, all the lights seem to be on. Things are moving. Oh, that's taking a hit. That's better. Excellent. It looks like a proper setup. It looks like a real thing. Do you know what I mean? Like I know what I'm doing. And if I'm going to start patching this in a minute, good Lord. I'm like doing it for real. Right, before I patch anything, let's see if I can lift the bugger up. Let's unplug it. Okay, that cable can stay. So, how does this work? I guess it folds down. If I put this up, is that a good thing? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it really is. So those up. I can't put the other one up because that clashes with each other, but that prevents it from crashing in. Okay, and then from there, can I shift it up? Wow, it is heavy. It's heavy. Look at that. Look at that. That's my jellyfish. That's something special. Wow. I love it. Oh, I love it. Yeah, I could carry that with one hand. I mean, it's heavy, but it's carryable. Oh, my aching back. Right, let's get the bag in. Right, bag. Oh, the bag's quite heavy by itself. Ooh, it's got wooden bits. Right, I'm not fully understanding the internal nature of the bag, but let's see whether this fits in, and I'll show you it in a minute. There we go. Now, there's something quite special about this bag. The bag, in fact, is so special that I think I'm going to leave this be. I think they deserve it. I think, Arturia, you deserve to be on the front of this fella. This is very interesting. Now, I'm not entirely sure I'm doing it correctly. But what seems to happen is that you've still got your handle here, so you're still holding on to your rack, still holding on to your modular. You haven't left that behind. That's the bit that you're always holding on to, is that. So that's not going anywhere. So this zips up the side and undoes. Some Velcro flaps here and here. And this bit comes off over the top, which is pretty cool, giving you access to the inside. Now, but what seems to be how it works. There's these two pieces of wood, one here and one here, one on either side, which are kind of triangle shaped, that come up to an almost point here, and they just seem to sit right on the crux of this handle here. Now, I'm not entirely sure if they're supposed to do that, but the effect of them doing this is that they hold the entire rig off the base of the bag. So there's actually space and give at the bottom here, so that when you put it down, it's going down on these two pieces of wood, on the bottom of these two pieces of wood, rather than on your modular rig. So I'm not putting my modular on the floor. There's space underneath. So if I put it down in a puddle of beer, or, you know, it gets slid about by somebody, it's not sliding around on the modular case, it's sliding around purely on the bag. And that is flipping genius. Totally genius. I think that's what that's for. I can't think of how else it just fits there so nicely. And I was worried about these getting trapped or something, but they fit either side. It just seems absolutely how it's supposed to be. It's just brilliant. And then your system slides out. And your bag goes to one side. I'm at the gig. Which way around do I put this? This way around. I lie it carefully down. Minding my cables at the side. Open her up. Oh, that's still good, that. Still really good. Oh. I wonder if there's a way of it going further a little bit and lifting this up. Do I want it to do that? No, maybe I don't. Maybe that's fine. I just need to be careful of my cables. That's definitely a weak point. I might need to tape those down as well, or something. Don't know yet. Don't know yet. But there she is. So the system, the RackBrute system with the case, these two things together, it's excellent. Absolutely excellent. Taking the power supplies out of here was a piece of genius on my part, I have to say, because that just leaves you free to install as many modules as you possibly can. You don't want anything restricting that if you can help it. Then combining to a single power supply out the side is good. That appears to work. Obviously I'm going to have to play with it over time to see how well that works. But even if it doesn't work, I can always just take two power supplies and plug each one in individually. Not a problem. This is just slightly more convenient. So that's good. Putting my decal on the back, yeah, excellent. I've got a console here now that I can use. It's at a good height. If I can actually get it to this height at a gig, because usually you're on some kind of low table, then that could really work. And then putting it down, putting it in the bag. Wow. These little things that come up that protect it. So the one thing I now need to test, obviously, is to patch it, but then leave the patch in. See how well that works. Good stuff. I like it. I'm very impressed. Good job. Great. Right. So now let's do some patching. See if I can get a sound out of it. Okay, and finally I want to be able to fold it up, patched, and unfold it again. So let's kill everything. Fold it together. Now I've got to be careful because the tops of cables here are getting a little bit snagged. I also want to put out my bits here. Am I going to remember to do that when I've been drinking at a gig? I don't know. Okay, so this is not really, it's not really coming together. Let's take that out because it's not going to be there. There is some serious kind of crushing going on because it's not quite reaching the bottom because I've got cables going into cables. I mean, you know, chances of them all being in the same spot, there's a little bit of something going on there. So yeah, potentially, I mean, look in there. That's not great, is it? So I think my hope of having it patched is going to require some different patch cables because these are too tall. I'll have to think about that. These Hoser ones are just a little bit too tall, but you know, it's not too far off. It has potential. It's just not quite there. So let me put this down again. Gently. Open her up. It could do, but perhaps not with these cables. I'm going to need to look into getting some cables which do not have quite such a tall end. I mean, these braided ones, for instance, are slightly better. They're not quite so tall. And obviously right angle ones would also be good. So yeah. Not totally there, perhaps, but almost. The other thing slightly troubling is that it doesn't seem to turn on completely on the first go. It thinks about it, turns itself off, reboots, has another go. You know, that I think is probably to do with using the single power supply on both, or just perhaps the way I'm turning it on. It's just not quite pulling it together, but then it does. So a little bit more experimentation required, I think, in how it powers on and powers off, and maybe going with two power supplies is going to be the safer bet. However, all in all, it's been a flipping bloody brilliant little project. This is it. I think this is it. It needs some finesse. I need to work out again how to use the black sequencer properly rather than just randomizing patterns. I need to work out how to get the polycinematic to get a level and how to best to use that. I need to work out how data bender and beads have anything to do with anything of any use at all. Same with magneto, really. So, you know, I've got some working out to do in order to build this into some kind of workable live rig. But I'm loving it, loving the idea, loving the concept. If only it would close. So yeah, so I'm on the market now for some interesting patch cables which are not so tall. That I think is going to be a bit of a solution to this. So let's have a look at that power situation again, because I don't know, it needs a little bit further investigation. So I've got something with a switch on here because that plugging in and out of the cable has been feeling a little bit dodgy. Okay, so I'm going to plug that into the switch. So that's currently off. I'm going to plug that in to there. It kind of felt it was on because it flashed up a little bit, but I guess that's the charge from the power supply. I'm going to turn it on at the wall. So yeah, that's not right. Either something is shorting, which of course is possible, or there's just too much trying to go on. Right, something has changed. So let me plug into a single one of these rather than both and see if that helps. That plugs in no bother. Let's plug into the other one. That plugs in no bother. It's running the two at once seems to be perhaps a little bit more than it can stand, particularly as I've now gone through a four-way to a four-way to a four-way. So it's not quite delivering as much power as perhaps it was. However, let me try a different power supply. One that I use for running one of my other racks, which runs at least three, as far as I can think, at least three racks. Let's do the same thing. Okay, let's have this run a single. No bother. Let's try it with both. See, that runs it no problem. So maybe, I mean, one of the things Arturia said to me was that the power supply and the wall wart and all those things are designed to work with themselves. And so it may simply be that this is not generating enough amps. See, it says 3 amps on there. Whereas on my PowerCool laptop supply, up to 4.3. So it could simply be that. And maybe my answer is going to be to use a laptop supply rather than the ones that came with the RackBrute. Let me swap it back again, just to be sure. Yeah, so although I think it will start up on the Arturia power supply, I think I'm going to have to decide to use the other one. So there we go, that's the solution on that. And I didn't blow myself up, so that's awesome. Good. Good. So back to the patching then. Well, as it happens, I asked the internet what it thought about short patch cables. Not short patch cables, but short barrels on patch cables. Because I've been using these Hoser ones. I really like the Hoser ones. I mean, Hoser were lovely enough to send me a whole bunch of cables when I first got into this game. And they are my favourite ones. I mean, I've got braided ones and lovely ones and other bits and pieces and illuminated ones. But I always tend to come back to these. They're just great. But they're not going to work in this situation. This barrel bit here is too high. When the cases close up, they clash with each other. It's not pretty and it's just not going to work. So I put a call out onto the internet saying, well, does anybody have any ideas? And they did. Yes, they did. And what it came down to, I think, in the end, although there were plenty of options, I mean, I have, for instance, these ones here from FOMU that are good. See the length and depth of that barrel compared to the Hoser ones, you know, is much better. However, the problem I find with these is that because they have a black end on it, I find it difficult to absolutely identify which cable is going where. It's only follow the colour so far and then it disappears into a black end. So I much prefer to have a coloured end on my patch cable. So the consensus seemed to be tendrils, certainly. Now tendrils, as you may have come across them, are these right-angled patch cables, which of course would sort the problem out. Tendrils. But I don't really like them. I don't really want to use right angle ones, but I got a couple just in case anyway. But I have some other right angle ones and they would work, but I just didn't like them very much. However, with the tendrils, they are particularly thin and bendy, and that may be a factor. But more importantly, they also do straight ones. And these straight ones are very short on the barrel, about half the size almost than the hoser. So these seem to be like a good option, although they are slightly, they feel a bit weedy, I have to say. So anyway, I ordered myself a load of those because that's the sort of thing that I do. But there was another option as well that Thonk do, which are these control ones. Now these, similar to the tendrils, are in fact a millimetre shorter or two. Interesting about the control ones is that they actually say in the blurb that these are designed to be thin and shallow precisely because people are trying to put lids onto modular. So the fact that they talked about the lid issue, which is essentially what I'm having here, I'm kind of seeing it as a lid, although that's not really what's happening. It's kind of more complicated than that, but it was too complicated a question to ask, so I asked a question in regards to lids. But anyway, so these ones are designed to work with lids, and so I thought that might be a good one too. So I ordered a bunch of these as well, because again, that's kind of just what I do. I like to throw money at things and trying to solve an idea, because I must get this video finished and I must get it solved, so I'm just going to throw money at it. But thanks very much to Matt Tech from Matt Tech Modular for getting me onto these and having enough stock for me to buy a whole bunch, which is great. So I'm going to repatch this and then we're going to close it up to see whether that works. Hopefully this is the answer. So a new patch, working with these cables. They are rather sort of light and wangly. The thing about the cables that I'm used to is that they have a little bit more solidity to them, so they pull themselves off your modular a bit more, whereas these tend to droop and cling a little bit. I mean, it's just a matter of getting used to it, I think. But what's important at this point is whether now, with these stumpy cables, it will close, and I could close it patched. Take it to a gig, open it up, and it will work. See, that's it. That's the big question, so that's what I'm going to have to try now. Right. Good. Will this fella close? That's the question. Well, there is inevitably going to be some drag against various places. I'm going to have to be careful of that, but they are missing each other. Need to put up my little legs before I get too far into this. For protection. It's coming in, it's coming in. Alright, alright. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty tight in there. It's pretty tight, but it has closed successfully. So this may be, it may have worked. It may be the solution I'm after. Can you see in there how close things are? pick it up like so. Well, it's definitely a thing. I definitely think it can. Do have a little bit of movement and stuff. I mean, when it's in the bag, it's been held, it's been supported here and here. It's been lifted off the ground, so you don't get this sort of rocking against each other business, which I don't think is necessarily going to be good for it. If I can get it up this way, should be able to see in there. So there is enough gap, just about. I think that's going to work. I think that's going to work. I think that's a success. So I should then be able to go from here. Should be able to get to the gig, put it down in all confidence, lift it up, plug in an output, if I can find the output, put down the little legs, plug in power, so I'm at the gig, power's on. Now, what was everything running on? Okay, so I needed to put in a couple of notes here, like so. Yeah, nice. So that worked. I think we can officially say that worked. Yeah, nice. It's working. I'm already enjoying it. Did you see I used beads? I used beads almost on purpose, and magneto again almost on purpose. That was really quite interesting. I even got some drums going. It feels like it's coming together. Like this is a new dawn. That this is a system that's going to take me on to the top of the pops. Doesn't exist anymore, but you know, that kind of thing. So very exciting. It closed. It worked. I mean, it's something one is going to have to be careful about. If I'm lugging this around to a gig, but inevitably I'm going to be careful. And so I have confidence at the moment that I would be able to take this patched to a gig. There's other things, like I've got to learn how to save things in various bits and pieces. Might have to write down a few things with regards to the patch. But other than that, that is sweet. That's nice. That's great. So there we go. A pair of RackBrutes modded together with a view to becoming a live performance rig. I think that's quite successful. I'm very pleased with that, and I'm looking forward to taking this around the place. So, you know, if you want to invite me up for a gig, then yeah, just get in touch, right? And I'll be there, providing it's not too far away and not too late at night, you know, those kinds of things. So that would be great. So looking forward to doing that. So I hope that was useful. Thanks ever so much to Tom at Source/Arturia for sorting me out with the RackBrutes. That was brilliant. This is totally happening as a solution. Now I know this doesn't quite perhaps have that classic, you know, wooden case edge, these sorts of this sort of material, that vintage vibe to it. It doesn't. It has a more modern vibe, but that's all right. I'm going with that because of what it enables me to do. So good. Yeah, that's great. I hope that was useful. And in the meantime, go make some tunes.